Alright guys, welcome to the Tuesday direction video, doing our notes on some explorers today. We read about them yesterday. The past 2 days actually we've been reading about this kind of stuff, so let's kind of dive into it here. So here's your learning targets: assess the positive and negative consequences of the Columbian exchange, we'll get to that later, and summarize the European motivations for transoceanic trade as well as the innovations that allowed them to travel further. So here's some of the key stuff that we will see from today. A couple of names, right? Prince Henry, Vasco da Gama, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, Francisco Pizarro down there, Hernando Cortez, Christopher Columbus, Atahualpa, and then obviously some other things like the French Dutch Indian Company, or Dutch East India Company, and the Caravel. So let's kind of dive into it here. The first person that we need to know is Prince Henry the Navigator. And we need to know him because he started this whole exploration kind of boom by opening up the first school of navigation in Portugal. So he basically, Portugal is going to become a superpower during this time because of their sailing ability. And a lot of the explorers we're going to look at come from kind of Portugal or have ties to them. And it all kind of starts with square one, Prince Henry creating the school of navigation. So let's write that down. All right. So a lot of people who we talk about will learn from this man right here. So Prince Henry, obviously an important guy, right? He starts the school of navigation, and it just kind of goes from there. So yeah, like the Museum of Navigation is in Lisbon, which is kind of where this guy got his thing started. So they still kind of have that cultural tie to it. So the Portuguese, the Maritime Empire, exploring the west coast of Africa. They have Bartholomew Diaz, famous explorer. You have Vasco da Gama, another famous explorer. And then you have Alfonso de Albuquerque. But yeah, these two guys are probably the more famous one, right? One goes to the Horn of Africa, and the other one makes it to India. All right. Spanish background. So here's kind of how Spain gets involved. You got the king and the queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, had recently united Spain and expelled the Moors in the Reconquista. So Spain's now done fighting each other, and now they can kind of look outward to see what's out there. And the big thing right now is a lot of people want to make the spice trade coming from India as a really lucrative market right now. And Spain realizes that, and they want to try to get involved as quick as possible. Okay, and the other thing about kind of exploring and going to these places, it becomes highly competitive economically. It is in your best interest financially to explore, find new resources, bring it back, sell it. You can make a lot of money doing that way. And also, you get a source of nationalism. Like, you are prideful. Like, if nationalism, right, you want to be the first nation to go to somewhere or to beat somebody, beat a different country at this place. It's extremely prideful for your nation. We'll skip over that. Here's a map of the known world at the time. I'll kind of zoom in here for you guys. You can see it's definitely not what we'd expect. So a lot of these people are just kind of running into places and thinking they're in the wrong spot because they haven't really fully mapped the world yet. But it is pretty interesting because continent by size here, Asia's been discovered, Africa has been discovered, and Europe has been discovered. But as you can see, North and South America have yet to be discovered during this time. And they're number 3 and 4 on how large. So you can see that they haven't uncovered, they haven't unlocked a huge chunk of the world yet. Obviously the Americas. So insert this man, Christopher Columbus. All right, he's born in 1451 in Genoa, Italy. He's a self-taught navigation and map-making specialist. He was on a French fishing vessel. That's where he kind of self-taught himself how to navigate the seas and how to make maps and kind of record where he's going. He got the idea to travel west to India. Now, normally what they've been doing is that people have been going east to India, which is like a direct route. Now, Columbus has looked at the map that I showed above, this one, and he says, okay, I'm going to go the opposite way and just wrap around. It'll be shorter. It's probably faster. Well, obviously, there was some stuff that he had not discovered yet, or anybody has. Well, anyways, what he does then is he wants to go, he propositioned the King of Portugal basically gets shot down. So then he begs the king and queen of Spain, and they give him the go-ahead. So anyway, so he propositioned the king of Portugal, got shot down, begged the queen and king of Spain, and they said yes. So we got the approval. So we have an Italian explorer flying under the Spanish flag, gets the approval. We want to know the 3 ships. So obviously the Mina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. He hires 90 able sailors, and they set off on August 3rd, 1492. And we need to know the date that he set sail, because that's obviously a pretty important one in history. Christopher Columbus sails the ocean blue in 1492. Pretty easy to remember. We'll skip over that. So he doesn't make one voyage, or he makes a couple of voyages, 4 to be exact. You can kind of see it's kind of all over the place. The journeys themselves are not perfect, because obviously the technology and the navigating is not so precise. I mean, you're using tools like the astrolabe and the sextant and the compass. Like, you're just literally pointing, we're going that way. So obviously it takes a little bit, and some trips go a little bit better than others, depending on the weather. And for some of these things, like the sextant here, you actually need to be able to see the stars. You're kind of using the stars to guide you, but if it's cloudy or you can't see the sky, obviously you're going to be kind of flying blind there for a little bit. So other things, you got the wheel lock like muzzle loader, basically to help you when you land. And then they're all coming over on the ship called the Caravel. It's smaller, it's faster. It's supposed to kind of cut down the amount of travel time. But again, a lot of that comes down to the navigation. So they reached landfall on October 11th of 1492. They landed in the Bahamas, claimed the land and inhabitants for Spain. And then from this point, they traveled to Cuba and Hispaniola, which is, other, like, Cuban islands along the same kind of plain there. Called the inhabitants Indians. Obviously, we all know the story. He thinks he's going to India, so when he lands, he thinks he's in India. Calls everyone Indians, according to the tale, right? Expedition in 1493 to expand the colony. This is kind of his another return trip. The first one, when he comes back, they're like all gone. It's kind of interesting, but we're going to have to kind of skip over that. And then the second kind of, second kind of journey turns into a series of conversions, used inhabitants for labor. Basically, he made them mine. Everyone thinks there's gold over here, so Columbus sends everyone off to, like, basically slave labor to try to find this gold that's obviously not there. And obviously when Europeans coming over, they're going to affect the local population, not only with, kind of force them to work, but also the diseases that are brought over. This is one of the things that's a negative with the Columbian Exchange, is kind of the diseases that the Europeans bring over. So at the time of arrival, there's an estimated, pretty good chunk of number right there, right? About 250,000 people. A few short years later, like, we'll say 60 years later, there's only 500 left. And 100 years after that, extinct. So basically by Columbus coming over, it sparked a chain reactions which led to the Arawak becoming extinct. So, like, everyone is gone now. It's crazy how fast it happened. All right, now we do need to know the 3 G's for colonization. It's gold, right? Because that's what everyone's looking for, is the get-rich-quick scheme, looking for gold. Glory, that's kind of more for the personal explorer, right? You want to become famous, kind of like Marco Polo was in the past, right? And then obviously the gospel, spreading Christianity across the globe. These are the 3 G's, the 3 reasons why people explored during this time. All right, so let's kind of segue away from Christopher Columbus and look at Hernando Cortez versus Montezuma. This will be the Aztecs. So Cortez is a Spanish conquistador, right? And Cortez is going to be the one that conquers the Aztecs. So the Aztecs, obviously, a pretty interesting group. They're way more advanced than what people thought. So when these Spanish explorers showed up and they got brought to the capital, Tenochtitlan here, which is just modern day Mexico City, when they walk in, it's like mind-boggling to them how this is just in the middle of the jungle, and how these savage people have created something so amazing and so beautiful and so vast. So it ends up getting the nickname the Venice of the Americas because of all the little canals here, because it's literally built on like a swampy land. And this has to go back to like their origin of coming over. Basically, the Aztecs weren't always the biggest, baddest dudes on the planet, and so they kind of got stuck with the crappy land in Mexico, which is kind of swampy land. It's actually kind of built in the middle of a lake, to be honest. So they have the canals here to help kind of get around, just like they do in Venice, Italy, where you see all the canals and the people rowing. Now, one of the challenges of living kind of in the middle of the lake is where do we grow food? And so one of the ways they get around this is they build their own kind of floating gardens. It's called the Chinapa. Let's write that down. Okay, as you can see, 15 feet by 30 feet, so they're massive. They're kind of just set up in like blocks, and you line them all up, and it kind of looks like this, and you're able to grow food on them. And you can see how they kind of build them here. I'll zoom in. As you can see, right, they kind of build their own place to grow food. So you can see here, you layer it up, put the dirt on, put the stuff on top, put your crops in there, and then obviously water it, and you have a bunch of floating gardens called the Chinapa. Pretty ingenious. We'll skip over that. Aztec writing, we'll skip over that. The Aztec Codex is basically the manuscript. It's kind of like the Rosetta Stone. If you think about Egypt and hieroglyphs and unlocking it, it's kind of that. But for the Aztecs, it's a manuscript. It definitely helps us out know what these different symbols mean, and we can kind of do a better job of translating it. So a lot of the information we get comes from the Codex there. Fierce Warriors, I think we can pause here for today. Tomorrow will be something similar to this. We have MCA testing at school. So I'm only gonna have half the class this time and half the class next time, so we may have to just kind of pause it here, and then I'll pick up tomorrow. But all right, talk to you guys later.